So I just want to remind you all to stay humble and think about that really, you're really not that big of a deal anyway, so it doesn't necessarily matter. And I often think about this, right? Like, even if you were a big fish in a small pond, let's say you were a Nobel laureate, or let's say that you were a celebrity CEO, or you were actually a real celebrity that you might think about. Often it doesn't matter in your day-to-day any of the effects of fame or status or any of that kind of stuff. Your day-to-day is still the same. You get up, if you're Ryan Reynolds, by the way, if you're Ryan Reynolds, it would be cool to meet up with you. If you're Ryan Reynolds, you still get up, have coffee, you have your breakfast, you have a shower, and your day-to-day doesn't change all that much, even though everybody knows who you are and what your name is. So I think you really can't take yourself seriously in any sort of way. I think it's important to remember to stay humble no matter what happens in your life and how much you move up or whatever, success indicators you get. Maybe you earn a little bit more money than somebody else. Maybe that people know what your name is. It doesn't matter. I mean, think about this, that your life can be completely different in a very quick way if something had done something else would have went differently in your life. Maybe you had a different parent, maybe you had a different teacher, maybe you had a different friend, and your life can be completely different. And I think we need to remember that no matter what happens in our life, we need to take a step back and say, hey, we're really, really can be in any situation. You could be extremely fortunate or not so fortunate. So I think, personally for me, I got to remember to stay humble and think about hey, who am I? There's not much difference between me and somebody else that, for example, is living on the street. And I think about that. If I made one different mistake, instead on the days that I feel bad and I decided to try, some addicting drug, for example, or I had an injury and I decided to take a lot of codeine, for example, for that injury, and I grew an addiction. It's very easy to be in that position, just like anybody else. It's not because that they are somehow different than you. It's the fact that we're all so human that we end up in different positions in our world. And sometimes you end up in a moment where you're not so good. And maybe you had a slightly different support group, for example, to get you through the rough times and somebody else didn't. This stuff happens. So I think it's important to remember, who am I? Who cares? Honestly, just stay humble. And not only that, but recognize just how remarkable and fortunate that you actually are to be in the situation that you are, no matter where you are and what you're doing in this world. You're privileged. You're privileged by the fact that you live in a society, in a world that is far more wealthier than anything else we've seen. It is absolutely a wealthy, our economy is wealthier than it's ever been. And we have all sorts of tools and cool things that are fingertips that nobody else has had previously. So we need to remember to be thankful and think about just, I'm just a regular person doing regular things, and that is okay. So that's just something that I want you to take away. It's just reflect on trying to be as humble as possible. The world can be very different very quickly for any of us, given our life circumstance and whatever happens. Think about this, right? So let's say one of your relatives that was very close to you, or friend that was very close to you, had a bad accident, and decided to pull you down, or you fell into a really big depression because of that, and you had to take some drugs, for example, to get through that pain. Honestly, that's everybody that could be in that situation. So just remember to be humble, no matter how much success or whatever happens to you. Just like Ryan Reynolds, hey, he has coffee and a breakfast and all of that kind of stuff, just like everybody else. Just like that Nobel laureate. That person is famous because of their accomplishment, but hey, they still get up and they still probably hug their family. They probably have all of the limitations that you have, and that's okay. That's what it means to be human. So just remember that. Be humble. It's an important lesson for all of us to think about.